episode of This Week in Hockey East, we'll take you around the most important Hockey East matchups of the weekend, as well as our October standouts and some really exciting newcomers to keep an eye on, all on this episode of This Week in Hockey East. Welcome to this episode of This Week in Hockey East. I'm Bridget Prue alongside Eric Galanti, and we're going to start out this episode taking you through our Friday night showcase, Friday night Hockey East action. And Eric, we have UNH against Providence. Tell us a little bit about UNH.
Yeah, we're getting into the heart of kind of the early part of the season here. Some really good Hockey East matchups. And, UNH, you don't want to make too much of what happened in October, right? But that's a really impressive bounce back after a tough night Friday against Quinnipiac, where they gave up 8 goals. They lost 8-2. The score jumps out in that game, certainly. But it's worth noting the stats were actually quite a bit closer than maybe the score. Shots were 31-30. Quinnipiac did score twice on the power play. So then you jump ahead to that Saturday game, and it's a really nice 3-2 win for New Hampshire, going on the road to Quinnipiac and getting that win. They've had a little bit of a choppy start of the season. They've only played 4 games. Some Hockey East teams have already played 7. So it's still a little bit early, and they haven't really had a chance to get into a groove yet. But I think the thing that stands out most about what we talked about with UNH is what they did so well last year. They didn't give up shots. And that was the story once again. They were 4th best nationally last year in shots on goal allowed per game, and they held Quinnipiac to 19 shots on Saturday. No one holds Quinnipiac to 19 shots in their own building, so that was a big factor. It's kind of crazy to say and talk about defense when you give up 8 goals on Friday, but UNH has been really good limiting opportunities the last few years. I don't expect that 8-goal mark to be a trend, and Jared Whale really bounced back quite well on Saturday. So I still think we're kind of waiting to see what this offense is going to be. Their shots were up this weekend. They had 30 plus in each of their games. But, Friday was UNH's first 3-goal game of the season. So, I think you're still looking to that. But you talked about this last week, that they were down some guys. And those guys have started to come back. Cy LeClaire was back for his first games of the season. He scored in Saturday's game. Ryan Conmey, who had a really nice freshman year last year, he missed the Merrimack game. He came back 2 points and 13 shots in 2 games. So that's really important for them. I think they're going to round into form. So it's only 4 games into the season, still early. First home and home here for UNH in conference play. I really want to see how their special teams looks this weekend. The power play did get one on Saturday, but only their second power play goal of the season. PK was not great on the weekend. Quinnipiac scored 3 times. So this is a really good test for UNH against Providence. They've had success against Providence through the years, even with some good Providence teams. So again, still early in their season, only games number 5 and 6 for UNH, but I'm excited to see what we get from them.
Yeah, and you mentioned UNH having a little bit of injury trouble, people coming back. We'll get into what the Friars are dealing with injuries too, because they have a very key injury in their forward group. But we'll start out by just bringing you into where Providence is at this season so far. They're the 12th ranked team in the country right now, and they've had some really entertaining close games recently. Vermont, they went to overtime and then a shootout. They had a really close weekend, and they end up taking 4 of the 6 points against the Catamounts. So that was a key for them to start off the Hockey East schedule doing pretty well and getting those points early on in the season, because you're going to have to keep pace with BC and BU, who are once again top 5 teams in the country. So you want to rack up those points when you can. But to take you through some of the key takeaways from last weekend, Zach Borgil got a second start in net, and Philip Svedback had been playing the majority of time in net in his career so far. He played all 35 games last season for the Friars, and now Zach Borgil comes in as a grad transfer from Merrimack, and you see them, they're almost evenly splitting time so far. The Friars have played 5 games. Svedback got 3, Borgil got 2. Their stats are very similar so far, and this is really, it's uncommon for a Nate Lehman coach team to have a goalie tandem, because he tends to pick a guy and ride that guy, and that's just the main guy in net for him. And right now, it seems like maybe that's changing with Borgil available now for the Friars. So he made 26 saves, and he stopped all 3 shots in the shootout on Saturday. So he's right on his way. And also some takeaways come from the freshmen from the Friars. John Mustard and Will Elger both got their first career goals. Elger had a 2-goal weekend and was named the Pro Ambitions Hockey East Rookie of the Week. And now we'll get to the injuries I was talking about. So Cam Genren was injured in Friday's game. He missed Saturday. He transferred from UNH to PC. So this would be a matchup against his old team. But we're not sure whether or not he will be ready to play. So we'll keep an eye on him. But the Friars are also missing Trevor Connolly, who was a first-round draft pick. I don't believe he'll be back and ready to play this weekend. He's dealing with a bit of more of a severe injury that he suffered against Arizona State. So still waiting for him to get back in the lineup. But Braden Clark, another player for PC who hasn't played yet this season, is trending in the right direction, could see time in that UNH series.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because the fact that Providence has posted some goals here, Bridget, even despite the fact that Connolly wasn't there last week, that's a pretty good sign. The fact that they got to 4 on the road. And, the other thing with the goalies that's so fascinating is Nate Lehman was really blunt about it in the offseason, publicly and privately. 920 save percentage. That's what we need. 920 save percentage. He said that a lot. I know he said that to you. He said that to me. Whichever combination it takes to get there, whether it's one guy winning the job, whether it's both guys playing, that's what he said. So they're both just under that mark right now. It'll be interesting to see, but you got 2 goalies and sometimes that competition in practice certainly, benefits both guys. And I think that'll be the case for Providence, but it'll be interesting to watch. Good series this weekend to kick things off, Providence and UNH. We're going to continue on. You mentioned a couple of freshmen. We're going to look at some that you've heard of and some you maybe haven't yet heard of so far this week in Hockey East.
Welcome back into this episode of This Week in Hockey East. I'm Bridget Prue with Eric Galanti. And Eric, we wanted to do something different this week. We wanted to have our October standouts because we're almost done with the month of hockey. We're a few weeks into the season, and there are some players that are really starting to pop. And we're in particular going to highlight some newcomers to the league that maybe people haven't heard about yet. Can you take us through your men's rookie standouts?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We pulled the top 4 scorers on the men's side among freshmen so far. And there's 2 guys that you and I have talked a lot about. Most people certainly know about Cole Yzerman of Boston University, James Higgins for Boston College. No surprise to see those 2 there. But then maybe the other 2 guys are a little bit of a surprise, or at least kind of a little bit more unknown. So we wanted to take some time to talk about them. Let's start with Chris Delaney of UMass Lowell. 6 points so far, tied with James Higgins for first in hockey so far. He's a local guy from Hopkinton, Mass. Not the biggest guy in the world, just 5'7", 155 on the card. That may not be what you expect when you think of a Lowell player, but everyone you talk to, every scouting report you read says he plays so much bigger than that. But what a great start to the year. He had a goal and an assist against Merrimack last weekend. Points in 4 of his first 5 games so far. And he's really helped this Lowell team, which is scoring in a massive way. And that's the biggest difference from last year. And it's why Lowell's back in the national polls for the first time in a little while. They came in 20th this week. How about this? Lowell's averaging 3.8 goals per game. Obviously a small sample size, right? We've only played a month. But the last time Lowell averaged anywhere close to 3.8 goals per game for a season was 2016-17. So they haven't quite been in that range in a long time. So credit to them. It's nice to see the Riverhawks scoring again. Chris Delaney's been a big reason why. And then the other guy you look at on that list is Colin Kessler, first year from Anchorage, Alaska, coming into Vermont. Didn't play in the game Friday against Providence. We talked about that series, but had a goal and an assist on Saturday. He really broke out early in the season. 2 goals, 8 shots in his debut against St. Thomas. Played for Sioux City in the USHL last year. He took a huge jump. He was 20 more points last year than he had the prior year in the USHL. And Vermont, they gave Providence all they could handle last week, as you talked about. Overtime both nights. Providence won Friday and then the shootout Saturday. But a couple of guys who have been very solid early to go along with Yzerman and Higgins, who we're going to talk more about in our next segment with a couple of key non-conference games.
Yeah, and there's been some real standouts on the women's side for freshmen as well. You look through the top stats in the conference and you're seeing these first-year players right up at the top. And the 2 I want to spotlight are those 2 players, Lola Reed from BU and Eloise Caron from Northeastern University. I've had a chance to watch both of them play on different games this season that I've been broadcasting, and I was immediately impressed with the talent that both of these 2 players have. Lola is a little bit more of like a power forward. She's going to use her will to get to the net. And Eloise Caron is just this pure goal scorer. She has such a perfect shot. I watched that in person, was thoroughly impressed with her early start to this season. And their stats back it up as well. Lola Reed named the Hockey East Rookie of the Week for the second week in a row, a 3-goal weekend against Syracuse. And when we talked to head coach Tara Watchorn, she said, it's cool to see it become such a consistent thing that she's scoring at this pace all the time and developing into someone that makes her line mates better every game. And that's a really high praise for someone who's just started their collegiate career. And she said, and Tara Watchorn said, Lola has already left her mark on the program. She has 6 goals, 5 assists, 11 points, and is plus 10, which leads the team for the Terriers in all of those categories. And Eloise Caron, the freshman from Northeastern, she's had success with the Huskies' first line alongside Skylar Irving and Jaden Bogdan. That's a line that has 2 really experienced players in the league. And then Eloise Caron adding this element of youth and speed. Caron and Irving both have 4 goals and 6 assists for 10 points this year and are tied for second in Hockey East in points behind Lola Reed. Their line is combined for 26 points this season. So just a good dynamic. If you have a chance to watch the Northeastern woman, you will be impressed with the speed that line has.
So many freshmen have contributed so much here over the last couple of years in Hockey East, and we're excited to see more of them emerge as the year goes on. More to come on This Week in Hockey East. Time to go around Hockey East, presented by Boston Harbor Hotel. Visit hockeyeastonline.com for your chance to win championship tickets and a 2-night stay at the Boston Harbor Hotel. Still more really good non-conference games. Michigan is in for 2 to take on Boston University. A really good matchup this weekend, Bridget.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. I actually bought tickets and I'm going Friday night because I wanted to see this one in person so bad. So let me take you through what's so exciting about this matchup. So we have 2 top 15 teams in the country. BU coming in off of a weekend split at number 7 North Dakota. Really crazy atmosphere. I don't know if you had a chance to catch that one, Eric. That building just gets so electric because I feel like that fan base is kind of like an NHL fan base. They show up for this team up in North Dakota. And that was one thing that Jay Pandolfo was happy about. He said he wanted to bring his team early on in the season into an atmosphere like that and test them against a team like North Dakota, a top 10 ranked team in the country. So I think he got what he wanted out of that meeting as well. They split on the road trip, their first of the season. They've been playing at Aganis to start out. They'll be back there this weekend. And Tom Willander, a player to spotlight from that series, he was named Hockey East Defender of the Week after his performance against North Dakota. And I feel like always a talking point is Mathieu Caron, because he's a veteran on this BU team in net. And one thing that Jay Pandolfo said is he's kind of helping cover up some of the early defensive mistakes in making timely saves and keeping BU in games and helping them get those wins when maybe they're not quite perfect systematically so far this season. And some of that has to do with heavy turnover for BU again this season. But the freshmen have been contributing, and Jay Pandolfo mentioned that he's been happy, and he went through some of the freshmen that have stood out to him. Cole Hudson, he said, can control the game. Alex Zetterberg has been a really smart player who doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Kamil Bednarek is a great 2-way center, he said. And Brandon Svoboda attacks with speed. So those freshmen have been contributing. And some other BU notes, they scored at least 1 power play goal in every game this season. That's tied for most in Hockey East. 7 power play goals, 30%, just above that. So their power play has been doing pretty well. However, they did drop from number 3 to number 5 in the latest USCHO.com poll because of that split rather than taking 2 wins that weekend.
Speaking of Boston schools going out to NCHC teams, BC and St. Cloud this weekend. What a great game that was Saturday night. BC and Western Michigan, early candidate maybe with some of those main Quinnipiac games for game of the year. Western up 2-0. Andre Gasso gets BC on the board at the end of the third. Nice to see Teddy Stiga score his first career goal. He had a big game, but then Ryan Leonard, who's our night shift all-academic standout of the week. Bit of a slow start scoring-wise this year. He's hit far more posts than he had goals. But it clicked. 2 goals in the last minute, both off of turnovers. The game winner off of a turnover on a Western power play with 3 minutes left. He's electric, as we talked about, and he comes back obviously for this sophomore year. He's got such a connection with the crowd at Conti that it's creating moments that we're maybe not used to seeing around there, but it's really just amazing. So he has 2 goals on 11 shots plus 2 posts, which don't even factor in. And I would expect now that the goals have come to just kind of take off from there. And then the big thing, remember last year, the penalty kill was kind of that underrated piece of the BC team, #1 penalty kill in the country. Penalty kill was great, including killing off that power play late for Western with 3 minutes left. They're one of 4 teams left in the country with a perfect penalty kill. So something to note there. St. Cloud has a pretty good penalty kill too, 16 for 17. That'll allow us to jump into this weekend. 2 at St. Cloud. St. Cloud 6-1. Their only losses to the split to Michigan, which was a 3-0 loss Friday, but then they came back and won Saturday 4-0. So really good test for a young BC team. After next week against Maine, 7 of BC's first 8 games against top 14 teams, with 6 against top 10 teams, which St. Cloud now is. So really good non-conference matchups this week across Hockey East.
Yeah, and when we come back, we'll take you through the women's slate of Hockey East games when we continue on This Week in Hockey East.
Welcome back around Hockey East. What a weekend. Maybe the weekend of the year for Boston College women's hockey so far. They sweep #3 Clarkson. First time, as far as we know, that BC's won back-to-back games against a top 5 team. I was so impressed with Boston College's forecheck last week. They really forced Clarkson into mistakes and then took advantage of them. They blocked a ton of shots, 37 blocked shots in 2 games. And look, maybe it takes a minute for some people at the start of the season. We mentioned it's still only a month in, even on the women's side where teams have played 9-10 games. But Grace Campbell was awesome this weekend. 26 saves, 1 goal allowed Saturday, 41 saves on Sunday. A really nice in-season bounce back for her after a couple of tough games against Wisconsin and Holy Cross. 5 goals allowed now in her last 3 games after 12 in her first 3. How about Gabby Roy, who had a huge weekend? She's our Jersey Mike's a sub above Women's Player of the Week. She's now scored in 4 games in a row after she hadn't posted anything but an assist in her first 4 games. A couple of really important goals late in that game on Sunday. So they'll try to keep the momentum going in a one-off game Saturday against Merrimack. Remember, those 2 played 2 weeks ago. BC had a come from behind win at Lawler, so they kind of finish up the equivalent of a home and home at Conti Forum on Saturday.
Yeah, and PC and BU, another series this weekend in the women's side of Hockey East. And I think both of these teams are really interesting because so far through the season, they've been making a case that they might be able to crack the top 15 rankings. If you watch them so far, they have the goaltending to do it. They've been getting the scoring support. They've been slowly making their way towards that top 15. And this week, both teams were receiving votes just outside right now, but you could see them trending in that direction. And I mentioned both goaltenders. Callie Shanahan, best goals against average and save percentage in Hockey East. She's got a 1.06 goals against average. That's outstanding. And 960 save percentage is more than you can really ask your goalie to do. Those numbers have been really good for her so far. She had a shutout against Northeastern and against Maine. And Hope Olinsky for Providence, a goalie that I've seen a few times doing broadcasts this season, and her quality of saves just seems to be higher this year. And she has the second best goals against average and save percentage in Hockey East, and just playing really confidently right now. I think both coaching staffs are really happy with the start that their teams had, both BU and BC. And we mentioned Lola Reed has been on a roll. So that's somebody that this weekend could continue that. She's on a 5-game point streak coming into the weekend. And special teams, both teams with good power plays as well. PC at 19.1%, BU at 18.2%. That's second and third in Hockey East this weekend. So for them, maybe if one team takes the weekend, they might see themselves move up in the rankings if they can get a sweep.
Time to take some short shifts as we finish up, presented by The Shift Group, helping former athletes and veterans become elite business professionals. Full slate on Saturday on the women's side. Bridget, what stands out?
Yeah, so we have a rivalry match up in the north with Vermont and Maine, a 2-game weekend for them up in Orono. Holy Cross will take on 10th ranked UConn for a home and home series. Northeastern and UNH have a pair of games, and BC plays Merrimack Saturday. That's the only meeting for them this weekend. And all those Saturday games are at 2 p.m. besides that PCBU game at 3 p.m. that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, a couple of other notes just to look out for. Number one, we're going to talk about the Maine BC game that is coming next week in a minute. Maine with an opportunity to stay unbeaten on the season. They have two with Merrimack this weekend. Interesting to see how they do. A really nice comeback for them against Northeastern at Matthews on Saturday. And speaking of, the crowds have been awesome once again this year at the start of the season. UMass announced a sellout on Friday. Boston College was jammed on Saturday for Western Michigan. Northeastern had great crowds against Maine. Maine's Alphon's been jammed all year. And the fact that these teams are playing these big early non-conference matchups early in the season help bring the crowds in earlier in the year, it feels like. And it's so awesome for the students and awesome for us because we get to talk about it. So that's great to see.
And my last short shift of the evening is just a really fun event that we wanted to spotlight. We wanted to bring up happening November 8th. Hockey East has partnered with Night Shift to debut their Hockey East Ale. I don't know about you, Eric, but I'm a beer connoisseur, so I will be trying this. Hopefully, maybe our boss can send us some of this to try next episode. Brian, all right. You can join Hockey East and Night Shift Brewing at their Lovejoy Wharf location, which is right next to TD Garden. If you've never been, it's beautiful. It overlooks the Zakum Bridge and the harbor. I've been there before and really liked that location. And that watch party will start between Maine and Boston College men's teams on Nesson starting at 6:30 p.m. on November 8th. Fans can be among the first to try Hockey East Ale and be in attendance to win prize packs, including championship tickets. You can find more information at hockeyeastonline.com. Eric, I don't know if you're going to be able to
Watch
be there because
us,
you're broadcasting. Right? Are you broadcasting that game?
Yeah, you get double me, which I shouldn't say because that'll scare people away. But watch our show at 6:30 first, and then what should be potentially a top 5 matchup. Who knows? Maine and BC, one of the early games of the year. So definitely a game worth watching on that Friday night.
Definitely. And we have another one coming up here. So stay tuned here on Ness and PC and UNH Men coming up next.